joining us. We're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is McElvey Neal. I'm the managing editor at the Haitian Times, and happy to welcome you to yet another community conversation we're having this evening. It's our monthly panel that we put together to make sure our community has a view of what's happening behind the headlines and use the opportunity to hear their thoughts and just have the conversations take place in between stories and articles. So thank you so much for joining. And thank you to our sponsors, SUNY Downstate, Haitian American Alliance of New York, and Bell Machon for making it happen. We have a great panel with us today to just take us through what's been happening with Haiti on the ground in terms of relief, recovery, and the readiness efforts that we all know we have to plan for. There are a couple panelists based in Haiti that were invited to come today, and I think they'll make it. I'm pretty sure, but you know how things are with Haiti, especially today. So if they're able to still join us, we'll welcome them as part of the conversation um, when they're able to join. So with that said, I'll just very quickly run through what we've been experiencing in the past month. About a month ago yesterday, we had this earthquake, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake strike Haiti. It's killed at least 2,200 people that we know of. It's injured more than 13,000 people, destroyed some 55,000 homes, and damaged another 77,000 more. And this is all taking place in the Southwest primarily, from that Jacmel all through Lecai and over to the Port-au-Prince area, all along the southern portion of our country. So to say the devastation is wide, the scope of it would be an understatement. So what was interesting to us at the Haitian Times was as soon as we found out this was taking place, immediately on Twitter we saw people just posting things like, don't give to big organizations, make sure the money gets to the people who really need it. And it was just amazing to kind of see a lot of recommendations come forth from different organizations saying, here's an organization that I trust. Here are some people who are on the ground, grassroots groups, nonprofits who are Haitian led or who are Haitian centered on the ground that will make sure your money gets there and do what it needs to do. So providing emergency care to the people who are critically injured, food and sanitary basics, providing all of those basic needs just became part of the immediate relief effort. And we saw that organizations like the ones we have today really answered the call and just did what they had to do. So all of this, of course, is happening against the backdrop of the assassination the month prior of President Jovenel Moïse, all of the trauma of the gangs and the political strife, the kidnappings, the massacres that have displaced something like 20,000 people internally inside Haiti. So to be able to respond in any way, shape, or form is really miraculous. And so we'll get to hear a little bit from these panelists about how they were able to do that. The other thing no one really could forget is the fact that this happened in 2010, right? At that point, 220,000 people, we've heard even as high as 300,000 people were killed when that earthquake struck Haiti. And so we're bringing it up now because it did inform the response for the 2021 earthquake we experienced last month. So all of these, really thinking about just the complexity, the magnitude of what happened, really came to bear on this group of people that you're seeing now who represent how the country was able to respond despite not having a functioning government, and with so many people abroad in different governments being ready to help and not really having a way to do it formally to make sure people got the aid that they need. So with us today, we have some folks who are going to be able to just tell us what it's been like, maybe help us address some questions around how Haiti can move forward despite all of these, hits that our country keeps taking. How do we move people in Haiti, outside of Haiti, to a readiness mindset so that we can break the cycle of devastation, natural or man-made? I know that these are big questions, but we have to have these conversations and get the dialogue going. So please help us in welcoming our panelists today. Fiuman Backer, President of Haiti Renewal Alliance, Skylar Badenoch, CEO of Hope for Haiti, Dr. Marie-Marcel Deschamps, Secretary General of GISCO, and Ms. Mabel Valdivia, Executive Director of Foncoze USA. We have one more we expect from Capra Care, so if he's able to make it, we'll introduce him then. With that, I'd like to just start with the organizations who are on the ground right now, namely Hope for Haiti and GISCO. Can you tell us, Kyla, I'd like to start with you, just what it was like, for your group to respond and provide that immediate relief the morning of the earthquake, that 8:30 a.m. morning when everything started shaking. What was that like for your staff in Haiti?
Yeah, thanks so much, my colleague. And before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to the Haitian Times for having us on today, and all of the organizations on today. And we think so highly of the Haitian Times. And honestly, it's the first source of information that we always turn to for news about Haiti. So just thank you for all the work that you've done, not just during the earthquake and after the earthquake, but for a long time. And we're big admirers of your work. So for our team, the morning of the earthquake, when we received word that, at about 8 o'clock in the morning, there was a 7.2 magnitude earthquake that affected the greater South, Sud, Nipe, Grand Anse regions. There was a tremendous amount of worry because that's where our 60 staff members are. That's where their homes are. That's where their families are. That's where all of our partners are throughout that region and that corridor. And so there was a tremendous amount of worry. We initiated our phone tree immediately, and it took some time to get in touch with all of our staff. Luckily, all of them were accounted for. There was a few injuries, but superficial, and a lot of damaged homes and a lot of fear, obviously, because of the earthquake. And so, what that meant for us was we really turned our attention first and foremost to our team. That is the operating protocol of our organization in times of emergency, is make sure that our team members, Haitian doctors, Haitian nurses, amazing logisticians, educators, people who are running our programs are safe and okay. And what we wanted to do was resource them as quickly as possible so that they could get back, on their feet again and do what they actually wanted to do, which was help respond and be in service to people in the southern part of the country. And so by Sunday evening, our team was like ready to go, and they were asking, let's open up our infirmary and start treating patients. Let's start doing assessments to see where we can help out the most. Now let's get our plan going so that we can start implementing on it. And so the first thing that I always think of for our team is just the absolute challenge in I think dire circumstances that they've been working in over the last 2-3 years. With pay lock, with COVID, with the fluctuations in currency. These are really hard things to deal with. On top of that, an earthquake. On top of that, as we know, a tropical storm passed through the South. That was a nightmare for our team to have to, even, for us. I was in the States at the time. I flew down, I think, the Wednesday, but that was a nightmare to have to hear our team members literally crying on the other end of the phone about being out in the elements with their kids. It's something you never want to have to go through as a person, and you never want anybody you know and love to have to go through. So it was a challenging time. I think we've been able to recover and support our team to the point where now they're on the ground responding, implementing our short and long-term plan for earthquake response.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really heartbreaking to hear. People that crying on the phone and just trying to find a way out of this disaster. Dr. Deschamps, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit from GISCO's perspective what the response was like when the earthquake first struck? As a health services provider, how did you respond, your organization?
Yes, thank you as well for inviting me to attend this extraordinary meeting where we can find the time to discuss about Haiti and how we go from disaster to disaster. At Guestio site, as you know, in 2010, at our main point in Port-au-Prince, we were hit hard in 2010 by the earthquake, and we had to assist more than 7,000 families who were living on our campus. And learning from that experience, we were able to just, again, thinking about what the Haitian team from Guestio was going through at Hôpital Immaculée Conception, where we also have a site. And we have a team who works there, approximately 20 to 30 people working on that site for approximately 3,000 patients on HIV, with HIV, who are on triple drugs therapy, and tuberculosis patients as well. So rapidly, we had to get in touch with them and making sure everyone was okay and everyone was able to go to work and try to get in contact rapidly with the patients to know if the patients are okay or if they have been displaced, because we did not want them to be out of drugs, and making sure that they were alive or some of them were somewhere else where we could contact them immediately. The second thing that we did, the objective, we rapidly developed a strategic plan and identified a team in Port-au-Prince that could go and support the team in Lekai. And we identified physicians and nurses and social workers, knowing that we were going to target mainly a community approach where we would develop surveillance, making sure that they would not have outbreak, because when you have a large community, displaced community, we need to expect anytime infectious disease, wound infections. And that's what we found when we get there the day after. On Monday 16, we were already on the field in Lekai, and we had already identified dehydration, scabies infections, and also other waterborne disease. So we had to organize the camp and also organize our team at the Hôpital Immaculée Conception. Fortunately, the team was already prepared. The leaders, the community leaders were already there to welcome us and establish a plan of actions rapidly.
Dr. Deshawn, quick follow-up. We'd heard a lot about, the difficulties of traveling from Port-au-Prince and just getting to Lekai by, regular road, either because of the infrastructure damage that the country suffered, or people, gangs specifically. How did the organization manage to get from Port-au-Prince and connect with people in Lekai and throughout that region?
In fact, insecurity is the main obstacles, and we had to do everything by plane, which became more costly. Everything that we have to do, send our team down there. We did not want to take the chance to use the road. We did not want to put our staff at risk. So we had to use airplane. Unfortunately, that increased the cost of our expenses than we did not expect.
Wow. Fortunately, you had the funds available to try to do that, even though it was more expensive than by road. So thank you for, pivoting and being able to make that happen. Let me bring in Fearman now to just talk about what his organization does, which is the HRA. For those people abroad who wanted to be able to donate, tell us about how your organization came to the effort or contributed to the effort through your platform.
Well, thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for Haitian Time for setting up this panel a month after the earthquake to really discuss the response and how each of us participate in the response itself. We at HRA, we are a diaspora organization. And for the past 10 years, we've been really engaged in disaster relief, disaster preparedness, relief, and management as well. So we developed a platform called the Haitian Diaspora Emergency Response Unit. And last year, we received funding from the USAID, the Bureau of Humanitarian Affairs at USAID, in order to enhance the platform. And the goal of platform itself is to coordinate the Haitian diaspora in response to disaster. In fact, that 2 weeks prior to this earthquake, we were debating or preparing to the simulation of the platform to really look at when disaster happened, what do we in the diaspora do? And then the earthquake happened. So it was around 9:30 when my sister in New York called me. She says, hey, have you heard what happened? And she said, no, I haven't heard yet. She said, well, you better wake up because there is an earthquake that just happened in Haiti. So I called people, we start looking at the news. I called the ambassador in Haiti and we called the team quickly. We activate the Haitian Diaspora Emergency Response Unit. Once we activated, we met with our staff, and next things we set up a meeting with the diaspora, and that happened on Saturday at 2 o'clock to really share what is it that we know about the earthquake. And ever since at 6 o'clock every day, we have meeting with the diaspora to share with them the situation report, the need assessment, and all the good stuff. The thing is that we have learned from past experience, and it is because of what we've learned during the 2010 earthquake that we put in application. I have to go back a little bit to let you know that the HDRU is a platform that was created after the earthquake, and it is an emergency response unit that is activated every time there is a disaster. It was activated in 2016. We coordinate with the diaspora. It was activated also in 2018 during Dorian, and now we activate it again. So the purpose of it is to really work with diaspora organization that's always been responsive to disaster. And as you know that our family are in Haiti, whenever anything happened, we are the first one that they call. However, there's a level of preparedness we in the diaspora need in order to respond effectively and efficiently. So right then and there, we start working. And the first thing that we did is provide information. And we tell them, number one, we are not going around to collect things that the country does not need. Number two, cash is king. In 2016, we did that. And one of the things we stressed that if the item can be found in Haiti, do not collect it. Instead, let's collect money so that these things can be purchased in Haiti in order not to destroy the local economy, because we had that experience back in 2010, and the preparedness that we've done with organization in the diaspora is really provide past experience and best practices in order to respond effectively and accordingly. So that's what we did at the beginning, and that's what we are continuing to do right now as we speak.
No, that sounds really amazing. The swiftness of the response. By 2 p.m., you were on a call and had been able to just bring together a group of people, and you're still meeting today. That's really something. I know you're doing a lot more through the HRA, and we'll spend some time on that in a little bit when we talk about the recovery and some more about the readiness piece. But I did want to bring in Mabel from Foncoze to tell us a little bit about her organization and how a financial group played a role in this response.
Thanks so much. I wanted to just kind of add my voice of thanks to the Haitian Times for putting together this panel. Foncoze is a real fan of the Haitian Times and of the good work that you do in ensuring that the diaspora and any advocate or ally of Haiti is well informed about what is happening in Haiti. And these sessions like this are really important to have a peek behind kind of what the curtain is, what is in the media all the time. So thank you for this. And Mac, you know Foncoze fairly well, and we are not a humanitarian emergency response organization. Foncoze has been in Haiti for more than 27 years. We are Haitian founded, Haitian based. All of our staff are Haitians, and our leadership is primarily women. And so we are, I think, uniquely positioned in the country because we have like 47 branches spread throughout, and the South in particular, the one that was impacted by the earthquake and the subsequent tropical storm Grace, has about 13 branches and 13,000 clients that we serve. And we had 122 staff that were impacted directly by the earthquake. And on that Saturday morning, I will not forget that my colleagues texted me on WhatsApp and said, hey, this is happening right now. And so they had already started to call primarily to find out where everybody was, in the same way that our other friends here have talked about, and identified that everyone was accounted for except 2 staff who later in the evening we were able to account for. Everyone was safe, minor injuries, loss of property to some degree, but primarily lives of our staff were saved and not lost. And that was a big deal for us because in 2010, we did have staff that we lost, and our staff are suffering from PTSD. And so like Skylar mentioned, we also did a big initiative to immediately ensure that our staff were in the place of mind to be able to respond to clients, to be able to assess the situation. Teams came in from Port-au-Prince to be able to ensure that the banks that we have, the branches that we have, were able to be opened, because people actually did need money and access to be able to have cash on hand to be able to do whatever business they needed to take care of in the immediate. And today I can tell you that we have done hygiene kit distributions. We did cash grants to our staff to be sure that they were able to meet their immediate needs of their families. And we are also involved in PTSD counseling for them as well as for our clients, because these situations continue to happen in Haiti, the natural disasters, and they will continue as climate change is still a real issue for the country and for the rest of the world. But also, as my colleagues here have so eloquently said, that Haiti continues to face not only natural disasters but man-made, and so there's a lot there that our staff, who we love, and our clients, who we also love, need to work through and need to be able to have that support. And so that's Frank José's focus in the immediate, and we do have more long-term plans I'm happy to discuss later.
No, I love that, the fact that it's not just one type of organization that has to be part of the response, but it's everyone, right? From the financial sector, health, the direct servicing, social services organizations. I think it's so important for everyone to recognize that each type of group plays a role in making sure that folks can actually get the relief that they need, because people's needs do vary in situations like this. I'd like to welcome Jean-Pierre, the president of Capra Care, who's able to join us this afternoon. I believe you're still in Lekai now, right? Jean, is that right?
No, I'm in New York, so I'm based in New York.
Okay.
So here we are having a panelist about emergencies in Haiti, and I had my own right before we get on. So
that's what we figured. We're glad you're able to make it. And you came in just in time. We were just going over how each group really responded in the moment that morning of August 14th when the earthquake struck. So if you can, we'd love to hear how Capra Care, which is based in Lekai, actually worked through that, being affected themselves.
Yeah, I think I heard one of my colleagues just mention WhatsApp, because that's how I learned about it myself. It happened at 8:29 around that time, and by 8:41, I got a WhatsApp message from one of my directors and said, things just went crazy. Like we had an earthquake, people screaming, people running, houses fell down. It's just like out of nowhere, unexpected. The thing is, on Saturdays, we don't work as a full staff. On Saturday, we only have youth programming from 9 to 2 p.m. We have the full medical nurses, the full gamut, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. So he was on his way to the office when the earthquake happened. And immediately, it's Molino is his name. He's one of our 3 directors. And immediately he started to text everybody, hey, you guys okay? What's going on? That kind of, next thing I know, my phone is being flooded from all my, all the stuff who could reach me saying, hey, this happened, that kind of stuff that happened. But immediately we went into action. First of all, try to make sure that all our staff are safe. Is everybody okay? We spent about 5 days where we couldn't get into about 3 of our staff. And that's because they normally on the weekend, they go to the countryside. So now there's no electricity, their phone died, so they can't get in touch, and this we're going crazy. But we were very hopeful that they will be okay. And 5 days later, they were fine. But by 12:30, our staff started coming back to the office. I had 2 of my nurses who were injured themselves. Minor stuff, right? Leg issue, somebody got thrown off, and as they were leaving their house, or head issue, arm issue, but they were coming back. And one of them says, listen, my house is destroyed right now, but I know I have to come back to the office because we have people here in Fort-Fred who needs our immediate attention. And she came, she sent me pictures of her leg, and she came. Her husband texted me and said, she's okay, but this is what we signed up for. She has to respond. And by 12:30, our doctors was there, our nurses was there. Those that we could find were there. Even our other staff who were part of operations, they were picking people, bringing them, those that could come to Capra Care, bring. Those that can't come to Capra Care straight to the hospital, they bring them straight there. So that's how we initially started our earthquake response.
Wow. This whole scene you were painting for us, Jean, really reminds me, it's akin to, what we saw with 9/11 and first responders, just people being so focused on doing their jobs and helping the people who are counting on them to get them support. So thank you to all of you panelists for being able to answer the call to help folks. I know, being mindful of time, I want to go back to something that Firmin said about, cash is king, right? This whole idea of people, the old habits being, let's collect and ship things and, move them to Haiti. Tell us a little bit more, Firmin, if you would, about why that's not such a great idea these days, and maybe talk about some of the other lessons learned. Each of you will go around from 2010 that you've applied with this type of response, or the response this time around.
Yeah, I can talk about that because we've had some experience, because in 2010, a group of us from Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, we volunteer at the embassy, and then we set up actually a crisis, an incident command center at the embassy. And one of the things we did, and we did a drive, and we collect a lot of stuff, and we were grateful that the mayor of Washington, D.C. was great help, provide us a lot of people that came over, put everything in boxes for us, and also gave us a storage to put the stuff. What we realized that collecting them is one thing, storing them is another one, transporting them to Haiti, it takes a whole lot of logistics to do that, and things that we were not used to. And then we had to quickly come to, and then it happens that a lot of the stuff that we collect, and up until now, I don't know what happened to them. And it wasn't that just our own experience. A lot of people had the same experience. I talked with somebody just the other day who informed me that in 2010, they sent a big 40-foot container costing them $10,000 just to ship the container and get it out of port. It is like a lot of the things got lost and they didn't reach their destination. And I said, she said, this time she did not collect anything at all. She raised funds and assist the families in Haiti that have been affected, sent cash to them directly. So ever since then, we learned. So in 2016, doing Matthew, we said we're not gonna repeat the same thing. If people want to donate. If the items can be bought in Haiti, we're gonna have to go and send the money to Haiti for this item to be bought, and it's easier So when we look at the amount of effort it took to collect these items and to move them, and the amount of money that we spend to ship them as well, it's just not worth it. And on top of it, it's destroyed the local economy. And that was one of the major complaints that the businesses of Haiti has. So this time we do it differently. Case in point, we wanted to donate an equivalent of 80,000 barrels of water. We got it because we also have Ajerka, which is a private entity that assists with business continuity. So we partner with them and they give us a list of businesses, and we bought all of that water inside Haiti and we distribute them accordingly to organizations that are members of our platform that needed that. And we also send funds for organizations that wanted to provide relief to the remote area where that organization could not be reached. We provide them with funding and they bought the stuff in Haiti and they do that. So it's based on this lesson that we learn. And from time to time, every disaster, we're getting better and better and better. Like this time, what was needed, and based on the need assessment, what was needed the most were like medical equipments and medical supplies. And we tell our network, if those medical supplies can be bought in Haiti, send money. If they cannot be bought, we collect and we but make sure that we have the logistical chain in order to ensure that they get to the right destination. And that's why we partner with DPC, and we are also a member of CUN. And when those shipments go to Haiti, they are the recipient of whatever we send in order for them to assist with the distribution.
That makes sense. And what you said is in line with what Mybelle was describing with some of the clients, the merchants and vendors that her organization supports, because they have goods, they have merchandise to sell, right? Can you tell us just a little bit, maybe a couple stories around that, just how these clients you support, these small business owners, came to the fore and were also part of the response, Mybelle?
Yeah, the excellent point. We were just doing distribution of hygiene kits, and obviously a lot of times people will say, "Oh, we can donate this and we'll ship it to you," and by the time that gets there and all these things, the emergency is over and that's not needed. So Foncoze really invested in purchasing things from our clients who have boutique santé shops. So these are market women who also have community pharmacies essentially. And so they serve as both educators and immediate health providers in their communities, whether it's providing education on nutrition, screening for high blood pressure, talking to women about any reproductive health issues, and referring them to local health providers. They also sell really necessary immediate items oral rehydration salts, just a lot of things that people need during an emergency. And so we purchase those for our clients and for our staff from boutique santé clients. And so we've essentially reinvested back into the community, allowed women to continue their livelihoods in a time where it was difficult. And because we have clients all over the country, we have basically a market to be able to source these things and use it for the response. And so for us, like my colleagues here are saying, cash is king, and making sure that people understand that they're making a contribution to a specific activity and what the outcome and what the impact of that activity is really important, because organizations need to be transparent in the way they talk about how they use those, right? Because it's one thing to say, we need this money, this emergency has happened, but then go back to these supporters, be it the Diaspora, be it any other ally of Haiti, and make sure that you report in a clear, transparent way as to how this was used and what the impact is. Because I think part of the backlash that's happened on social media about giving to Haiti and the identification of organizations that are actually working on the ground are really tied to this issue of organizations popping up and saying, oh, we're responding, when in fact they're not, or paying an exorbitant amount of money on salaries or overhead and not really doing anything on the ground. And so being transparent, understanding the where you're working and really reinvesting in that community, I think is essential to be able to be successful in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great point. Thanks for just walking us all through that. No, a few of you mentioned the need to make sure that your workers were okay, right? Physically and mentally. I think Dr. Deschamps, you brought it up. From the lessons you all learned in 2010, can you speak a little bit more about just the mental health aspect of this, the immediate, relief, like aid effort, and then now as we move into the recovery phase, what role does that play, making sure that people have the mental health support that they need? And I'd like to hear from Dr. Deschamps, and then
Yes.
Pierre-Louis, and then Skylar, in that order, if it's okay.
Yes, yes. In fact, Mac, what we have seen is that the experience that we had experienced, that we've seen in 2010 compared to the one of 2020 is quite different. The fact that in 2010 we were in Port-au-Prince and it was the first earthquake, so many people, international organizations were there with us on the field, on the ground. This time, when I went myself, where I spent a week in Lekai and trying to dispatch the team to different camps, there were not many organizations doing the community approach and family after family and going to the special need of the community. I think there's a need, like you just mentioned, that we work locally with the local organizations who are on the field. Hope, fortunately, were there for the distribution directly to the community. It was essential because we have to understand we are dealing with probably 500,000 families who are actually homeless and getting poor and have no job. Their kids are not going to school. They have no place to go and they are desperate and they feel alone. Today, I was attending a Zoom meeting with them, with the social workers, and they are really feel alone and desperate and asking for help because there's not enough, I would say, community approach going from camp to camp. For example, we have been trying to find bladder to make sure that those people have clean water to take a bath or clean water to drink. It's still difficult for them to have access to that. And even them, they are not comfortable to live in a tent city. They are already asking, how are we going to move back home? How are we going to get back to work? How are we going to send our kids to school? So I think we need to think differently, working with the local organizations who are on the field on the day-to-day basis. And there are also infections that we need to consider. There are wound infection, there are scabies, there's a contagious children. And one thing also that I observed this time that I haven't seen in 2010, many women and children as well in the camps. So they need to be taken into consideration because they are the most vulnerable. And I know some of my social workers yesterday reporting already gender-based violence because there's no light, there's no security. And we need to consider that as well.
So by that, you mean just sexual assaults or abuse that's going on?
For sure, because like I said, I observe myself, many women were in the camp and also young adolescents with young boys. So you need to understand what may happen because it's completely dark. There's no light. So just think, I mean, the environment is not safe. And there's no one to bring that security. Whereas in Port-au-Prince, where we were so many organizations on the field, and there were less violence. And it's only, I'm talking about, it happened 3 weeks ago. And I think the longer they will stay in the camp, the more disaster we can find, more complication we can get. We need to get prepared and think about the next phase and next step.
Right. So officially now we're in the recovery phase. As of last week, Wednesday, I think, Protection Civil made that declaration. So yeah, it's important to think about that. How do you deal with that stress, right? All of these situations you described, just hearing it is giving me anxiety myself. So I can imagine someone, having to go through that day in and day out. Jean, tell us about how your plans at Capra Care try to make sure to incorporate that mental health or resiliency type support for your clients.
Well, mental health is something that we've been doing as an organization since 2010. Mental health was initially part of our program at the beginning, but Haitians were not, before 2010, they were just not buying into it. When Capra Care was founded in 2009, but 2010 was our first major response to disasters. Now, when the earthquake happened in Port-au-Prince, granted we were in Okai, I knew that we had a lot of folks from Okai, from Florida, who were living in Port-au-Prince, so I know they had to come back to Okai. So we set up a team that was strictly to provide support around psychological first aid. So ever since then, our staff have been getting training around mental health, bereavement, trauma, crisis, psychological first aid. They get this training ongoingly. So it's one of the very first thing that we have been able to provide right now. So as we were doing these mobile clinics and responding to the disaster, responding to injuries, wounds, and so forth, by Monday, we were also beginning the counseling part of psychological first aid. It happened on Saturday, so we knew folks needed at least a little time. By Monday, they were like, whoop. Now they started to kind of share like, wow, I almost died. I lost so-and-so, I lost all my stuff. So as we were sending our staff to begin to do mobile clinics, we were also sending our mental health staff to also begin the counseling. So you will see, like in many of the images, you see people sitting one-on-one. That is the counseling that they are receiving. For our staff, we had a whole big discussion about this earlier last week about how they taking care of themselves, because they too are traumatized. They too lost this. They too have concern how I'm going to rebuild. Where's the support gonna come from? And I'll say the good thing for us is we were able to get some generous support that basically say, hey, this fund here is to also take care of your guys who's taking care of the others. So that allow us now to be able to provide them, extra funds for the recovery for themselves as well. So they don't, to at least alleviate some of the stress of, wow, yeah, I'm gonna get a compensation from Capra Care, but that's not even gonna be enough to help me to recover my stuff that I lost, my house that I have to put back together and so forth. So we didn't want our staff to really be in that position of, that kind of level of stress. So we were able to also advance them some funds to help with that aspect of recovery. But as we recover now, the mental health aspect is ongoing for us. And we do this both with the adults and the children as well. We had sessions with all of them to just discuss how did they impact them, how they feel, and just to give them that platform just to speak about it and get it off their chest.
Yeah.
So that's how we going about it right now, and that will be ongoing as well. Because you have to remember, it's not just this earthquake. Folks got hit with 3 things between 2020 and 2021. You got the COVID aspects, then you have the assassination of the president. So I said 3, but I really should say 4, because now you have the earthquake, and then you have Hurricane Grace. You can imagine Saturday you get hit with an earthquake. By Monday, Sunday you were getting hit with Hurricane Grace.
And
you had women.
All those aftershocks.
Right. And so you had, right, in between all of those. So it's like you experiencing this over and over and over again. It's like you just live in this continuously. But I've always said this, living in Haiti is a daily hard living condition. Haitians are experiencing trauma every single day. So forget 2010, forget the political instability, forget the cholera of 2010, forget this Hurricane Matthew, Cindy. This is going on every single day. When you have a government that is unstable, every single year, you know, around this time, this is hurricane season, from August to November, hurricane season. But September is a major stress for everybody because school's about to open. And this is where you start to hear, how am I gonna pay? You know, how am I gonna put food and then send my kid to the best school? Some folks just can't send their kids to school. So every single day is a daily hardship living in Haiti. So we make mental health as an ongoing support that we provide in the community.
You know, amen to that, because growing up, it's always been about, you know, the idea of so Haitian ou Maréren, when you keep it moving, right?
Yeah.
You just keep going, you're resilient, ou prend care, and you just keep going. But these disasters are just too much. It's like nonstop. And I may just be too old to say this, but I don't remember a phase in the country where it was nonstop around the clock like this. But enough about me. Skylar, I know your organization does a lot of work with the Ministry of Health, right? So can you talk to us about how the partnership with the government, you know, what version of it we have now in Haiti has been able to support in the recovery aspect, both whether mental, physical, and certainly just helping to support children and all of the families who need help?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I would just tack on to Jean-Pierre, you know, this is also on top of Paylock. And those are some hard days for a lot of people in Haiti. And I was in the 2010 earthquake. I flew down the day before and ended up in Carrefour for about a month. And then, you know, I flew down 3 days after this one and was helping our team coordinate our response and just helping, you know, be with our team. And so I spent a lot of time definitely comparing, you know, what the experience was then to what it is now. And everything that my co-panelist said, you know, rings pretty true. The one thing that I think I would add is that, you know, this is also a really big destruction of livelihoods in the rural areas. And so not just the camps in Port-au-Prince and Cavaillon and Acan and Saint-Louis-du-Sud and, you know, Camperin, but like go up to the mountains in Baradère and go up to, you know, Corey-el-Henri and all the way inland. And you see a lot of devastation to livelihood, not as much devastation to life, luckily, because we never want to see that again. That was you know, that was something that was just so challenging to see, but more to the livelihoods. And so in our initial response, one of the things that we knew immediately based on what we learned was that, you know, it's been said many times here, cash is king. And so what we wanted to do is make sure that we provided cash resources to 25 of our partners, to the tune in total of about $250,000 that we had on hand. And that went out within a week. And that also included the government. You know, we weren't able to provide direct cash to HIC, but we figured out a way to buy them medication. And we're going to continue to also support their oxygen supply. For some reason, their oxygen system broke and they were waiting on a part. And so they were out of oxygen. And so what we've done is we've allocated resources to supply Fatma, HIC, and Sanatorium with oxygen and help with the logistics in the cost of that. We've also taken the lead. We've taken direction from MSPP on where to do our mobile clinics. So our team of doctors, Haitian doctors and nurses since the earthquake, we've made 7,000 consultations and provided free medication to those people who are in need. MSPP is telling us where to go and do our mobile clinics. And so, you know, I was able to go and see mobile clinics throughout that corridor, like all the way from Les Cayes all the way to Aken, where our team of doctors and nurses are loading up the vehicles that we have already had in place with the medication that we've already had, or we're purchasing in Les Cayes, and we're responding based on where MSPP is telling us to go. We feel like that's a better way, and different than 2010, when everybody kind of came in a few days after and it was like a free for all. This one seems a little different in that MSPP, Dr. Fevrier in Le Kai is telling us, like, go to these communities, serve these communities. And that's been for us, it's been a better way, and it feels more meaningful to take the lead from MSPP. And one other thing that I would mention, because this is something that I've been thinking about, like the cash transfers has been huge for us. And we've made purpose to, over the last month, do more than 1,600 cash transfers, totaling more than $200,000 US. We've been using Mon Cash exclusively, so that we can trace it, we can track it. We have a system for verification. I see the transactions every single day. I actually make phone calls today, calling people in Creole, being like, when voulez vérifier si ute reçu cobla, and they would be like, yeah, I got 5,000 good, thank you, and that makes that, to me, it's different for sure. And to have teachers lined up in our Mon Cash, community health workers lined up, so we can fund their wallets and really flip a switch and get them cash they need to make their own decision, seems like more of a, in my opinion, humane response.
So are you, by cash transfers, kind of, do you mean like remittances, the type that regular Haitians in diaspora will send to family and friends, like through
No,
Western
it's
Union or Unity?
yeah, it's very different. Although that's a really interesting topic, and we should talk about it, since
That's a
last
whole
year
other panel.
last year Haitians sent $3 billion
I know.
back home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge number. And if you think about it, who's going to really rebuild the country? Probably the diaspora, with $3 billion, as opposed to whatever the international community is gonna contribute. But I think the story's somehow flipped, because maybe the international community has a better TikTok account or Instagram, but really the diaspora are going to be the ones who really help fund their family members in the reconstruction. I really believe that. But the Mon Cash is actually through Digicel, and it's the mobile cash system that Digicel has really wisely invested in. They've been a wonderful partner of ours in helping us navigate how to do it. We actually did this before with COVID. We gave 150 cash transfers to Timachin, the street vendors, for two reasons. One, because we know they're the backbone of the local economy, and two, because we all love street food, Haitian street food. So we thought, let's support our friends there.
No, this is great. Thanks so much. We'll definitely have to follow up on just, more cash, and just being able to help people in innovative ways and using digital technology to do that.
Yeah, I think it's got to be, sorry, I'm just going to add, it's got to be transparent. That's the key to us, is that we need to be able to say, here's the person, here's the amount, here's the transaction receipt, here's how we vetted. And if you really want to call that person and check, you should, and you can. And that's the level of transparency that we need to have, I think, as an organization. Sorry to interrupt you there, but
no, I love it. And that's the reason why, this group here is why the Haitian Times chose to recommend you guys, your groups, for as organizations to support when we were inundated with requests for, how do we help? Who do we give money to? Because of your record of financial transparency, fiscal responsibility, we were comfortable to be able to put together that list and promote it on our socials. So keep up the transparency, I say, please.
I could say that indeed, Hope has been very active. Wherever you are, you hear about Hope. Extraordinary team.
Excellent. I'm glad you all could just be here to support each other through this.
By the way, it goes the other way. So we know Yesio is like the gold standard for medical care in Haiti. So, and everybody on this panel, by the way. So when we got a chance to see that we were going to be part of it, it was an honor. So everybody here.
That's awesome. Firmin, you had mentioned that HR is part of the COUN, COUN, and that you work closely with Protection Civile and other groups within the Haitian government. And now you're talking about, or meeting with them, helping them through the recovery and then the readiness, long-term readiness piece, right? And I know we only have a few minutes to go, and we'll probably have to do another one of these, but tell us how you've been able to manage, like work through, work with a government despite all of the chaos and political machinations taking place to actually get things done. what is that going to look like for us, for the country, right? With
Yeah,
help
well,
people like the HRA for Coons to actually get something planned out so the country can be ready for more disasters like this.
yeah, HRA, I mean, we've been working with the government ever since 2010 as a
Mhm.
result of an event we used to do that's called the HRA Business Investment Expo and Conference. In fact, we have MOUs and partnership with several government entity, including the CFI, the Minister of Commerce, and the American Chamber of Commerce in Haiti. So we stay above the politics and work with institutions in order to advance our mission. So Kuhn, when we developed the framework for the diaspora integration in humanitarian affairs. So we reached out to Dr. Chandler, who's the head of DPC, and started to develop a relationship with the institution ever since last year. In fact, when we got the funding to develop the framework, he was part of a working group platform, and we get his advice and his buy-in in developing the Haitian diaspora emergency response unit. As a result of the work that he see that we do, he says he does not want, if an emergency happens, to speak with 50 organizations. He wants a centralized system that he can tap into in order to facilitate diaspora participation in humanitarian assistance should a disaster strike. So as a result of that relationship, it was a natural fit for us to be part of the CON, which is the central center for Centre Opérationnel d'Urgence Nationale. It's like the FEMA of the United States that really is there to manage emergency. So as a result of that, so he made us a member of the CON, and we do have people in Haiti that sat in the CON meeting and that report back to us what is it that the needs are and how are we in the diaspora plugged into the system. So that relationship facilitate us in the diaspora participation in the relief. So now we move into recovery now.
Right.
What we do on the platform is we divide the platform into clusters. So we have a housing clusters, we have a logistic cluster, we have an education cluster, and we even have a protection cluster that we call mental health. That those cluster will continue the work during the recovery. In each of our cluster leads are also a member of the different clusters in Haiti as well. Case in point, we know that housing is going to be a huge aspect. So we have a cluster lead, and that cluster lead is a member of the housing cluster in Haiti that is being led by IOM and the Minister of Planning and ULCC, EPL. So we are in touch with all of these entities that will be responsible to rebuild the houses or the infrastructure, I should say, of the affected area. So that's how we're able to continue to work with the different entities of the government without getting into the politics of it all or everything that's going on now.
Yeah, so I think at this point, Firmin, you're sharing so much information. Now's a good time for you all to put in your websites and your contact information for people who would like to learn more. I see in our chat that there are lots of questions around how to get in touch with you all and just stay abreast of the conversation. And we also have some questions, lots of questions that I'm hoping we'll get through in a little bit. But yeah, if you all could go ahead and put in your websites for people to learn more about the framework that you mentioned, Firmin, Skylar, you mentioned all the work with the MSPP. please go ahead and just share that information while we wrap up the readiness approach part of the conversation and then move into some questions. So, Jean, you from Lekai, you know this area so well and the environs, right? It's really interesting to see how people are just already trying to rebuild. I think within a few days of the earthquake, we saw folks trying to go in to rebuild what little they could of their homes, right? But what we know from the scientists and the geologists is that Haiti is, it's like just fault lines central, essentially. These earthquakes are going to keep happening over and over again. So what are you hearing? I'm curious to know about how these folks feel they can be prepared for next time to mitigate the loss of life or the damage to their properties. Is there any sense that people might want to move to higher ground or whatever that might translate into? How are they processing that next time outlook from what you've seen or heard?
Well, there is no, you can't, the only way to do that is to escape Haiti, right? And a lot of folks wants to escape Haiti, which is sad in itself. But folks can't leave. Where else can you go to? These are people who've been living in their property since they were, born. There's a Lakou system, right? That's where the aunts and the grandparents, and they inherited these land. They can't just get up and go someplace else. It's not gonna happen. They're really gonna have to, like Skylar mentioned, is gonna be on the back of the diaspora. It's gonna be on folks like myself that have family back home to send money to help them to rebuild better. And if they happens to don't have family members here and they're not getting any support, because let's be realistic, not everyone is going to get some support. Some folks will fall in between the cracks. That's just the reality of it. But some folks will also have to sell some livestock. Some folks will have to sell some land to build back better. However, when you have competing priorities as opposed to housing, school, food, and this may just be the only thing that you have as property that you may have to sell to bury you, should later on, you passed away or some emergency happened. So people are gonna have to struggle here with so many different competing priorities on how they recover back. Does that make sense? So a lot of folks will not be able to be back better. Some folks will actually build back worse, just to preserve the lower resources that they actually have.
Yeah. No,
So,
I mean, it's so go ahead, finish your thought. Okay, I think, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I think for us, this is how we are supporting the community. We have a community health workers training program where we train locals to become community health workers. These are the folks who are actually responding to their own support. So we've had 6 cohorts of training. 3 things happen when you train folks. 1, they can take the information for themselves, okay, and respond, right? Emergencies, they learn some stuff from us, they could respond. 2, they can make themselves become more marketable, where they are able to now potentially get employment with an organization. In fact, Skylar, one of your nurses, came from Capra's training program.
Awesome, I love it.
He's white now. And that's the idea. We train you, have the information for yourself. We train you where now you can say, you know what? When I put my resume together, I can send it, looks better. I can send it to Hope for Haiti, they could hire me, and they did. The other part is, as we grow as an organization, we also look from that pool to hire from that group. So this whole recovery process with Capra getting some support to expand, to do mobile clinics to other communities and areas, we have already hired extra nurses, we have already hired extra doctors. That's all part of the recovery, but it's also part of the development to help folks help themselves. So that's where we're gonna be relying a lot on. So when the next disaster happens, we'll have more folks who are trained to be community health workers. And I think one thing that I've learned, with the idea was to do it in a sense that they can help themselves. But now I also realize that because I have partners like Skylar with Hope for Haiti, and I'm also gonna say Gaskia, I'm also gonna say Foncose. Foncose, by the way, we've been friends with, it's almost like Foncose is an ally, but never know that they were an ally, right? Because this happens. The same way as we respond to disaster now, you see folks who come to donate to support you. You never know that they were there, but they've been watching. We've been friends with Foncose since we started, because that's how we were not able to even open bank accounts with other banks in Haiti, because that whole process is crazy. Foncose had made that very streamless for us. In fact, one of my former board members is either on or was a board member with Foncose. So she's been telling me for quite a while. Her name is Beth Daniel, about Foncose. So now that I know we have all these friends, we will be reaching out and say, hey, how can we really come together? Because now with our experience from 2010, the cholera, with Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Matthew, we know we can't behave the same way anymore. We have to have across the board collaboration. And it has to involve every single person, especially us, who's been there, done that, and on the ground. We're not leaving. This is not a mission work for us. This is not us coming in for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Hey, we did what we do, we are. No. Yeah. The same way that we did 20 mobile clinics in different areas, from Maniche to Campeland, different areas. However, each of those areas, we have a contact. So as we recover, we will go back now and do the follow-up. Same thing with scholars and Hope. They're gonna go back. So as you look into support organization, that's great. You may have supported some of the bigger ones that can go in and airlift people and provide, 50,000 tons of food. That's fine. But we all gonna eat one day. We are gonna eat for a week. What happened after a week?
Right.
And that's where my message to all of you guys here who are listening, think about sustainability, right? Think about putting us organizations in a better place than you find us, because we are these first responders. It's us. So when the next disaster happens, I would say, listen, donate to us 25 monthly, 50 monthly, 100, whatever you can afford. Because when you do that, it allows us to better budget moving forward. It allows us to put the infrastructure in place. So when these things happen, it's not you that has to come down in Haiti 3 weeks later, 1 week later. People will be dead by that time. When you have an emergency in here in the States, what do? You call 911. Within 5 minutes, they're there to give you CPR, whatever. We are that 911. It's us that's gonna be responding immediately. So consider supporting us. $10, 20, 25. As opposed to, disaster happened, you come in 250, 500, and now we spend it exactly on the disaster, and now it's over, we in recovery, we back to where we were, or we're not able to sustain that support. So, I don't know how much time we have. I don't want to say more, but as you guys are listening,
you just took us all to script, and I love it. Everybody's just like, yes, thank you, long term. So thank you for that. I think everyone is just really agreeing and nodding that it has to be long term, it has to be sustainable. And the idea of supporting all of these groups on a monthly or annual basis consistently to ensure you have the cash infusion to continue to respond. I think that's a very strong message. So thank you for that. Before we move into questions, I do want to hear from Mabel and Dr. Deshaw, just from a health and finance perspective, right? What your plans look like for long-term sustainable solutions for going forward to be able to respond to disasters like this. Either Mabel or go ahead.
Yeah, like Jean-Pierre said, I fully agree. We need to focus on sustainability. And I would reinforce on regulation as well. Education, regulation. Because when you look at it, we did not learn from 2010. The construction is still anarchic. People are building the way they want, and there's no strict regulation. We need to think about what do we want for Haiti? We are there to stay. We're not going to go anywhere. Those local organizations are there to stay in Haiti. There's no other place to go. So we have to learn to work together, like you said, create a network, reinforce our capacity, and making sure that we all respect the rules. And to do that, we need to reinforce education, education, and education, and education.
Mm-hmm. That's very, very important. Thank you so much. Mabel, anything to add from a financial standpoint on long-term solutions organizations like yours may be able to provide in Haiti?
Yeah, so excellent from my panelists here, excellent points. Long-term sustainability is critical, regulation is critical, and to that point, Foncoze is the first microfinance institution to be regulated in Haiti. We are recognized by the central bank. That happened just this year, and that means that the diaspora can have bank accounts at Foncoze and transfer money to their families or to whatever organization that they choose to in Haiti through Foncoze. We are regulated, so we're operating as a regular financial institution, but we're serving the people that are most hardworking in Haiti, so the rural micro entrepreneurs, particularly women. So that is part of the long-term sustainability, to be able to have a financial institution that is helping support the backbone of the Haitian economy is really critical. We receive, to Skylar's point, those $3 billion in remittances. A lot of that comes through Foncoze because the diaspora knows that they can trust the organization to be able to deliver those funds to the clients that they're being directed to. We use Moncash. We have Foncoze points throughout the country that people can collect cash transfers. They can make payments to different kinds of things, send money to their family members that are in rural areas. So that our network is broad and wide. We do payroll for some of the organizations that are responding to the emergencies that we're speaking of right now. So Foncoze's reach and footprint is really large in Haiti, and we're not going anywhere, right? Like it's not going to end, and we're going to continue to support Haitian entrepreneurs now. We did it before 2010, in the next emergency, and into the future as long as it's needed. So that's really our plan, sustainability. Absolutely, the monthly support from individuals, Haitian allies to Haiti, the diaspora is really critical. But investing in Haitian businesses and Haitian organizations, I think, is super duper important, so that the Haitian people can see, like, look, this is an investment in us being able to respond to the needs of our own people. There is really, it's great to have international support from the international community, but the reality is that we have the knowledge and the expertise on the ground in Haiti right now, and the investment in those institutions need to continue.
That's excellent. Simran, really quickly, and then I think we might have time for maybe 3 questions. But I know you're launching your investor tank for people in the diaspora abroad who are interested in investing long-term in terms of building businesses in Haiti. Do you want to talk just for a minute about what that looks like and what you would suggest, how people could go about maybe participating or getting more information about this idea?
Yeah, thank you. The prior conversation was so interesting. It's like I feel like I should have stepped in and talk about a few things regarding disaster preparedness, all of that we have not got into. And also, we've been thinking of developing some financial instrument for diaspora to participate in the long-term reconstruction in Haiti. And I would love to have a conversation with Foncoze to brainstorm about what we are thinking, because there have been some ideas that some people advise to open like a diaspora development bank. They've been to talk, and we start the conversation into toying or to brainstorming about how that could happen. But if we can have a conversation with Foncoze to really developing some financial instrument to tap into the $3.8 billion dollars that the diaspora is sent to Haiti. We have some ideas that have been in the development, but it's really to get financial institutions to buy into this, to really develop them for us. That's where we are at this point. And I think this earthquake is giving us an opportunity to further that conversation and to put what we've been thinking of into practice for like a long time. And as it been said, and I've been to a lot of meetings with the international community, with the United Nations and USAID. The international community this time is not stepping up. The money is not coming in. That's the word on the street. And the word on the street, the diaspora would need to step up. And that's what's been happening. And that if every conversation that I've been in, that's what's going on. And we've heard that, and we are thinking about it and looking at how that we are going to step up, not the same way we used to, but a different way. That's why we develop a word that say that build back better with different players, and the different player this time is the diaspora. I just wanted to say that to segue into what we're talking about here. We've been advocating for diaspora funding for a long time, particularly with USAID. And we tell them that if they really want to see diaspora engagement, they need to fund some projects that diaspora have on the ground. So as a result of that, last year they listened to us and said, okay, we're gonna start a pilot group project to see how that works. So there is one session that we used to do on our event that's called Investors Think, because I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, so we brought that on. In fact, that we have a number of entity that started on our platform, one of which I should mention, Creole Essence, that I'm sure that you've heard of them, that started on our platform, and they made it to the real Shark Tank, and now that they are really a big business. So they said, okay, can we bring that back? Yes, we did. We brought that back, and it is for the diaspora, for diaspora organization with projects in Haiti. It is a competition that they would come on the platform, pitch their project, and a panel of judges will evaluate them, give them a score, and the public who's watching the show itself will have an opportunity also to vote for their favorite project as well. We launched the application in July. The application closed August 16, and we have selected 15 applications in 3 sectors: health, agribusiness, and shelter. And the competition, the pitch competition, is going to be in October, and the winners will be awarded $150,000 from USAID, and to work with a prime contractor to implement their project. There's a lot that I can say about that, but in a nutshell, that's what is it. And we're really happy that the USAID have stepped up to really put money in the hands of diaspora with project in Haiti. Hopefully, when that is done, that they can expand it to include more sectors, and also to give more funding to really entice the diaspora to look at Haiti as an investment, or not a place that where they can just go and do relief and do humanitarian assistance as well. So I'm inviting everyone that if you have not sign up to come and watch the show, go to the website that's called investorthink.org, investorthink.org, and look at the list of the finalists, and also to register to come and see the show that's going to be in October 12th, the 19th, and the 26th.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Bruman. I know we're past time, and there are a couple of questions we wanted to get to, but before we do, I did want to recap for anyone who joined the conversation at different times. just to make sure some of the key points that we've heard tonight, everyone hears them, right? The very first thing is this idea of making sure your people are okay, both the providers, so they can then be equipped to really provide care and respond appropriately to people on the ground. Really love that. Number two is cash is king, right? Stop collecting things and trying to ship them and store them. Just fund organizations that are on the ground who can get the money connected to support the local economy, pay for flights and charter flights to get to these remote areas that, roads that are impassable make it impossible to get into. So, and going forward, we're hearing there is quite a bit of work going on between organizations like Hope for Haiti and Haiti Renewal Alliance to just work with the government, the pieces of it that are functioning, despite the political turmoil taking place, to make sure that there is that people are taken care of. And so folks like Foncose, Jisco, they're just stalwarts on the ground who are there always to make sure that the people who need it the most get the help that they need. Last but not least, I'm hearing it's up to the diaspora. This is a big point we've heard tonight. There's a lot to be done moving forward. It's not going to be really up to the international community, whether it's through remittances or funding groups like the ones we have here tonight. We have to figure out as the Diaspora or Friends of Haiti how to make it happen. So just in case you missed some of these points, we wanted to make sure everyone got them before we move into questions just for a couple of minutes. So here, there's a lot of questions about Foncose, things like the interest rate, how do I open a bank account? So I will leave them to Mabel to just respond either one-off or after this panel tonight. We can connect you to the folks in the chat to make sure that you get back to them, and then obviously publish, report back what the answers are for everyone to have these, to have the information. There's one here, someone here really wants to know how to help people who can't afford things in the local economy because of price gouging, because of, I guess, gangs and just not being able to afford things. How are those people being serviced? Have any of you run into that, and what type of advice or approach have you taken to make sure that people who need these items are able to get them to survive?
I haven't seen too much of that. I do know we've done some local purchasing. And the first thing we did, we went to some of the bigger depots and started purchasing in Lekai. And then I kind of realized, I'm like, we're buying imported rice for sure. And so then we started going out to like Gele and Torbec and talking to the rice farmers and purchasing from them, which I think is better, because then it's getting into the hands of people who probably have affected families. But I haven't seen yet too much of it. But what I was going to mention, the prices definitely vary at the depots. And so our strategy is we always get three performas for anything we're buying over a certain dollar amount, and then we negotiate. So, we and I don't negotiate, by the way. I would be a terrible negotiator. So we have the right person on our team, and it's not me to negotiate prices in Haiti.
No, I agree that we try to purchase locally to boost the economy, and make sure as well, even for the cooking, we try to put the women together and the men together, whereas they can work in the camp itself and use what they can find locally, and try not to export anything from overseas. And we realize that we create natural leader in the camps as well. So we try to create group for them to work together, group of youth, group of women, group of focus group, whereas they can discuss. And now we're trying to consider how we can send the kids back to school, even in the camp itself, and trying to come up with a new model of having a shelter where the children and the teachers who are in the camp can meet together during the day and try to make time more useful and educative, and use that time where they are together and learn. So that's the next phase we are dealing with, as well as trying to prevent infections and waterborne disease.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Dr. Deschamps. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add just something particularly to Dr. Deschamps. We at HRA, we do not have projects on the ground. We are not there. What we do is we support organizations, particularly diaspora organizations that are on the ground. Regarding the school, we have partnered with there is a big entity that will provide us some school supplies. Of course, that since we do not have project on the ground, and that has never been the mission of HRA. Okay, to begin with, there are a lot of people that say, well, we should have something. I said there are a lot of organizations that have things on the ground. It's best that we support them rather than having things on the ground. So perhaps after that we can talk, because once we receive them, we need to find organizations to give them to who are doing work on the ground. So I just want to put that out there, just in case there are organizations that are willing to come on the platform to work with us to get access to resources that we have. We do not ask anything from organization. We're here to give them rather than asking. We have a website where people can, where organizations, not individuals, organizations called can register. It's a onediaspora.org. Once you register with us, we have a form where you can make requests for resources. When we receive them, we process it. If we don't have it, we look for it. If we have it, we transfer it to you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to know, and I'll reach out to you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Glad to see these connections taking place. Freeman, someone is asking again about the website for the investment organization. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell it live to us, or put it in the chat so folks
I'll put it in the chat, and I said it's onediaspora.org, because there's another onediaspora.com. Be careful when you're typing it. It's onediaspora, diaspora.org.
Okay, thank you for that. Dr. Deschamps, let's come back to you, because a few people had questions about the experiences of survivors in these camps, right? Specifically about the gender-based violence that you mentioned. You know, there are questions around like gang activities or criminal activities that may be taking place. Have you all heard or seen evidence of that happening at the camps? What's that situation like?
We have not seen a gang violence in the camp, in the area of Lekai or the surrounding Lekai. I don't know how is it in the Grandance or NIP, but in the area of Lekai, we haven't heard about gangs. But what happened, and we need to understand, there are young girls who are in the camp at nights, and sometimes the mother is not there or father is not there, so she's alone. And what they have found, and they have reported, and we started a program, in fact, today, we have a team who went down today with the psychologists, social workers, and physicians, making sure we create the focus group that I mentioned. We created what they call the Club of the Youth, that I call the Club des Jeunes. Like that, they can discuss about sex, the risk of having unwanted pregnancy, and talking about it, and making sure also the parents are aware and talk openly about it. Leaving a young girl in the camp by herself, 13, 14 years old, with a young boys who are not doing much during the day and even at night in the dark. So they need to work together and create natural leaders. And what we found, the women are really those who are really concerned about it, the mothers, the aunt, the sisters. So we tried to discuss, and this started yesterday when the team went, and I know they started the discussion today to create this model of group of youth and with the parents to discuss about sexual relation and the risk of unwanted pregnancy. and the respect of each other. And this is fun. We have experienced the same thing in 2010, because you have to realize it. There's no more doors. There's no more windows. Everything is open. The girls are sleeping on the floor. And that's the fact. That's the consequences. So we need to learn from that experience and try to work closer with the camps and identify the natural leaders in the camp that can protect those youth.
Well, thank you for taking the lead on that and helping to address it with the camps. We did have another quick question for you. I don't know if you have the latest rates, but if you could give us an idea of the COVID situation in Haiti, right, in this camp specifically. Have you heard of those infections continuing to spread like we did hear so much of it happening in May with the Delta variant? What impact is COVID having right now? That's a question I have.
Yes, as you are aware, we received from the US government 500,000 doses.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, like you are aware, those doses arrived right after the assassination of the president. So it created kind of distractions where people had to focus on other priorities.
Mhm.
And as you may be aware as well, COVID has not hit hard Haiti, the community itself, even though all the distancing, wearing masks, washing hands have not been respected fully, but we can say up to now, we had observed less than 25,000 confirmed cases with a not too high lethality rate, not as much as in the States or in Europe, but still we are at 2.8%. Unfortunately, the community, the population doesn't believe much about COVID. It's like if when you talk about it, they said, like one of the panelists mentioned, they have so much other priorities.
Yeah.
They have so much other day-to-day than they have to think. How I'm going to say, the thing that I hear the most, how I'm going to send my kids to school, how I'm going to go back home, when am I going to have a roof? I mean, this is mainly the priority. And what we're trying to do with our Agence Santé Polyvalent is trying again to talk about it anyway and make them aware variant exists, even though Haiti has been lucky enough not to have the big catastrophe that they had in the US or Europe, but it may happen at any time. So they need to be prepared and they need to be aware. So we still continue the mobilization. The vaccines are there for free. Unfortunately, as of yesterday, there were only 35,000 doses, first doses, and only 13% of them or 20% of them had received the second dose. So there's a lot to do. And they are going to be expired beginning of November. So we need to try and make them understand that the vaccine is there to prevent the chronic disease, not much to prevent the infection itself, but we know the effect of the COVID vaccine is mainly to prevent death. And this, we try to talk about it, but it's not their priority. We need to realize it's not their priority. Their priority is send their kids to school, be able to have a roof again, and get back to their normal life, what we call regular life, I could say, not normal life, because the situation is very difficult for the community in Haiti, in fact.
So speaking of that, this question goes, I think, maybe for Jean-Pierre, Louis, or Skylar, right? Besides the tarps we've seen, these camps that are set up, going into, recovery, are there other resources that are being suggested to help people stay in their communities that are not tents? Like, is there an in-between between camps with these tents set up and actually going back into your house that's brick and mortar?
Jean-Pierre, you want to take that, or I can chime in. You go first.
Listen, I said provide jobs. That's always been my go-to. You create job, people will find a way to take care of themselves. And the best way to create jobs is support organizations that are on the ground doing the work. That way, folks can, once folks get jobs, they're gonna know what to do. We can't be the one to always come up with the answers when folks already have the answer at hand for themselves. And the easiest route is, easiest, best, most effective is create jobs. Create jobs by supporting our programs to be able to hire local folks. We have so many needs, so many things that we can do to be very creative. But if you support us, because like my colleague Furman says, USAID is not gonna come to support you. These other international big organizations, there's so much going on in the world right now. Folks are tired, even individuals. Like Haiti again?
Yeah.
I don't trust them. The money's not gonna go in the right hand, in the right person's, to the right person. But you also have a responsibility. I'm Haitian, and I say this: the people who has to save Haiti and put Haiti back on its dignity is us Haitians. We need friends, we need allies, we have them, but we ourselves have a responsibility, and that responsibility is an obligation to help our fellow Haitian, point blank. And the best way you do that is jobs. When I left Haiti, I was 9 years old. I came in the United States. I was being called Haitian booty scratcher. You got an HIV, go back to Haiti. I was 9. I was in the 5th grade. I said, I'm gonna go back. Before I go back, I'm gonna get an education. I'm gonna create a business, an organization that's gonna create that. I was 9 years old. I knew it had to do with job because all my parents come for a job, my uncles, my aunts, other friends whose parents came was the same thing. Job. So if Haiti has jobs, then we don't have to leave. And if Haiti has jobs, we won't have to, rely so much on the government. Like Tyler was saying, it's a shame that we have to support the government of Haiti. And we give them, they can't give back to us. In the state here, it's the other way around. But you know what? It's fine. Go ahead and support your cousins, support your parents. I'm not against that. I did that. It cost me $20,000 in debt while I was still in college. It's not sustainable. So I had to get to one point and say, you know what? I can't do that because I have 3 kids now. I had to build my own family too. So now I'm taking care of cousins who's having babies and I can't have because I'm sending my money to you. I had to stop. But I already knew it started with creating an organization. I created Capra. I got 31 staff in Haiti. I hire a few nurses, just hire a few doctors because folks support. Now continue to support that way. And the thing is, it's not to support to depend on you, but it's to support to give us the leverage to be able to create this system to sustain and then get off your aid. Capra is not an aid organization, we're about development. But if we create this job, we can create synergy, we can create other projects. Like Furman is mentioning, for people to invest. Even Hope for Haiti also has a program where they invest into entrepreneurs. That's what's gonna change things. When I was in Haiti, we had veti there, we had sugar cane, we had different plants. Now you don't have this. Everybody's now wants to do motorcycle taxis. But if we create a job, they don't have to do motorcycle taxis only. They don't have to rely, on selling themselves. Calling cousins for, to put minutes to send me up, to send me this, send me that. They can actually buy it. Plus, when you start to do that, the person who's gonna get the job will be your family member. That's who's gonna get the job and get off your payroll.
This is why I love these conversations for people like you to for us. No, from beginning to end, so people understand the cycle, right? And how one thing begets another, and how it becomes a long-term sustainable, more sustainable option than just sending money through uni transfer or wherever every week. Skylar, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just adding in because, you do a lot of thinking when you're driving into the rural areas, like it took us about 3 hours to get to Baradere. We went up to Petit Trou de Nip to a community called Vive. Took us another 3 hours. It's past La Zille, pretty close to the epicenter. And you start thinking about the families in the rural areas. And like Jean-Pierre Louis was saying, like the most of those folks are farmers, and a lot of their homes are pretty modest. They're not, as sophisticated as the homes in Lake Kai and in the other cities. And so, I thought a lot about that, and I was like, wow, if there's 50,000 homes, just put this in perspective, right? If there's 50,000 homes that are damaged, let's say if for example, on average, the needed repair was $1,000 US, that's like $50 million that's needed. If it's more than that, let's say it's that's 100 million. So, I think putting into perspective what the cost would be to be able to even help people repair their livelihoods in their homes, I think you have to look at the math behind it, and then what exactly people would need to buy to repair their homes. I think Jean-Pierre Louis said it before, but families are they're facing reality, and the reality is it's not going to be Build Back Better for everybody,
Right.
because you got to build back with what's available and what you have access to. And if you don't have access to $2,000 or $3,000 to rebuild your home, you're going to use what you have available. I saw a community out in Guatemala and named Rousseau, and I went and visited one day, and the whole house fell down. I mean, it was every wall inside had totally been knocked down, because the walls were basically mud brick. And I came back 2 days later, and the community, the owner of the home, who I knew from a previous time in Haiti, they had cleaned out the home. Their family came from Port-au-Prince with bois, with wood, and also tôle, and they were patching it back together. And that's what I think we're going to probably see more of. And that's what happened after Matthew too. And the folks in the South, I think, they're not recovering from the 2010 earthquake as much, because that was just more of an economic impact.
Right.
They're recovering from Hurricane Matthew, and so they're going to be using the same, I think, tactics to rebuild their homes and their livelihoods out in the rural areas.
So I think, thank you, Tyler, for that. It sends us into one last question I think we should ask before we wrap it up, because we're way over time. Are any of you helping people to build homes? Or if not, do you know any organizations that are actively trying to help people rebuild, safer homes at the moment?
Actually, we are doing an assessment. Actually, now we started it last week to hear about the community itself. How many of them would like to go back to their exact place, and what is it they need to go back to that places. And we're doing like a cartography, a mapping of the 3 camps where we are working. And what we found is that majority would like to go even under a shelter to go back in their neighborhood. That is, if we focus, I think like Skyler said, it would be too costly to think of rebuilding at present. But if we change the strategy, we create jobs and we assist them by going back to where they lived, and make them live on the same campus, not to create tent city anymore, stay away from the tent city, but create job and give them the opportunity to go back where they were. That will be the best strategy, and that's what they are requesting. I just received the report this afternoon. Out of 205 families that they asked the question specifically, what would you need right now to move back out of the camp? And that's what the major answer is. If I find a job, I find something to do, I can take my family from that camp where I'm not happy and go back where I were, and I would create an environment, a safer environment for my family. So we need to together to create that momentum and strategy and make sure we don't create that tent cities that we saw for 2-3 years in Port-au-Prince.
Yeah.
Let me add to that. Last week we did a shelter webinar, and we had somebody from the government came in talk, and we had somebody from IOM came in talk, and we had another gentleman from the Miyamoto Kit Miyamoto that came and speak to give us a preliminary assessment, because one of the things that we share with the diaspora, that you need to be informed before you move. And there's an assessment that's being done. We ask them to wait. Once we get a hold of the assessment, then we can look at it and develop a strategy as far as how to assist the people to rebuild and how to rebuild. one of the things Kit shared with us, he says, based on what he's seen, now a lot of the houses can be really built because that it's not there, not overly that damaged. They can be built with less than $500. Like Skylar said, it may not take a lot of money to assist those people to rebuild the house, but there's there's another category as well that would need a complete rebuild of the house. So far, I have had about 4 organizations that I know of who are looking to build houses in Haiti, and each of them has a specific number. One has 10, another one has 300, another one has 20, and another one has 15. So I asked them all of that. Once you build them, what's next, and how much you have? And then when we start talking, and they scale back because of the questions that I've been asking them. So I said, we need to start thinking creatively how you can take your 10 houses, the funds that you're gonna build 10 houses that would cost X amount, how you can multiply that. And that's why I want to talk with Fonkoze to see what exactly, how we can multiply the funds we have to assist more people. And we got to start thinking creatively. That's what we're discussing with some of our members on the One Diaspora platform, and asking them to hold on a little bit. You building 10, the other one wanted to how much. Let's come together and see exactly how we can think from a financial perspective. It's like Jesus did with 2 fish and 5 bread and feed 5,000, or like how many thousand people. How do we take the small amount of funds that we have and multiply that to reach the most amount of people that we can? That's why I tell them to hold on. Let's wait for the assessment. Let's have some concrete numbers, and we can see how we can do that. So that's why we are working on it. That's why we have a shelter cluster that is tapped into the government shelter cluster itself, in order to be more informed about how we should move with the resources that we have.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's really a lot of opportunity to do some creative collaboration. Fonkoze is continuing to look at this issue of housing. We have not developed a loan product or any financial instrument at present that helps people to purchase homes or build homes. However, it is not out of the realm of possibility that we would be able to think about, or what it would look like in an emergency response, to be able to create a fund where the diaspora helps to guarantee funds to be able to do house rebuilding or home building as a result of an emergency. Those are all within the realm of possibility. And I think that those are critical things that we need to discuss, because as a financial institution whose double bottom line is really to be a social enterprise for the people of Haiti, it is something that we can bring to the table. And the diaspora, who's sending $3.8 billion to Haiti every year, should be able to support that initiative. So we're open to this conversation, and I think that these are kind of very concrete ways of how we continue to move forward, and to, take away from the tagline, build back better. I think it's possible.
We'll be talking.
Okay. Well, we are so over time, but I wanted to thank everyone so much. I think in addition to the initial conversation we had, the themes from this Q&A are provide jobs and collaborate with local organizations. We didn't get to chat much about the remote locations in Haiti, outside of Lekai, in different places. Skylar mentioned a couple, just in passing from his experience, but we know there are a lot of work. There's a lot of work to be done to bring support to those groups as well. So I would encourage everyone to stay tuned to the Haitian Times, because we will be following and trying to answer all of the questions that came in through the chat, through Facebook, either through our articles or additional panel conversations like this. So again, thank you so much Skylar, Jean-Pierre, Mabel, Dr. Deschamps, and Freeman. You guys are so excellent with your organizations. I've learned so much just from sitting with you over the past hour, almost 2 hours. And I'm sure our panelists, our participants, and our viewers who will watch the replay will learn quite a bit as well. We will follow up with everyone with resources that have been shared here today, as we usually do. If you registered for the Zoom session, you will get that email in the next few days or early next week. And for the panelists, some of the questions we didn't get to, we will just forward them to you. I know Mabel, for one, will probably have to add to her Q&A or FAQs on the Fonkoze website, because there are a lot of questions for her. So again, thank you all so much. Continue to support the Haitian Times at haitiantimes.com or through social, as well as all of the groups here today. Thank you so much and have a wonderful